Welcome to another edition of Jazz Smack, where tonight the Jazz traveled to Los Angeles to play the Lakers. And boy, was it a shootout. Keyonte and Lauri have huge games offensively. Let's talk about it.
Jazz Smack, NBA and Utah Jazz basketball.
So that was a heck of a shootout in Los Angeles. Keyonte had a huge first half, scores 23. I think Lauri at the half had around 20. And they both ended up scoring over 30 in this game. I mean, absolutely massive numbers for both of those guys. On the other side of it, the Lakers, too, had some huge performances in terms of Luka had a lot of points. He led the team. I think he scored 37. And LeBron, first game back this season for LeBron. And you kind of had this feeling that when you heard that there were rumors that he may come back soon, that this would be the game where he does return. I mean, it makes sense for him to play his first game back in Los Angeles and to try and integrate him there especially against a team. The Utah Jazz so far is struggling on the road, especially this season, against a struggling team that struggles to play on the road. So this was a perfect game for LeBron to come back and try and get integrated back into what the Lakers have been doing. So from that standpoint, in reality, I expected him to play tonight when I heard there were rumors that he was going to be ready soon. And this was a perfect game for him to come back. And he did. He actually played well. Double digits in assists. So he was a major contributor to the Lakers' win, that's for sure. But that first half was really interesting, really fun to watch. The Jazz, they were hitting on all cylinders offensively, just scoring just point after point. The Jazz shot over 50% in this game, which is a big thing for this Utah Jazz team, especially on the road. They've struggled on the road shooting the basketball, not this game. They played really well on the offensive side of the ball, especially in that first half. Second half was a little bit different. You know, they couldn't manufacture the same points that they did in the first half, and still the Lakers just were kind of scoring, without a lot of resistance. So this is where the Jazz really need to continue to focus, is on that defensive side of the ball. And we all know that is what the Jazz focus has been so far this season. Now we're only 14, 15 games into this season. So you wouldn't expect all those problems to be corrected to this point. It's a process. It's going to take time. And quite frankly, not all these problems can be solved this season. It's going to take this season, next season, etc., to solve the defensive issues that the Jazz have at the current moment. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like it wasn't just the first half. If you look at Keyonte's game throughout the game, if he plays like this, he's an all-star or quasi-all-star level of player. I mean, he looked fantastic in this game. On the offensive end, he got to the free throw line enough, not as much as he has been. Shot the ball really well. Shot the ball respectively from three-point line. Obviously, his first half was better than the second half, but he looked really good in this game. And Lauri, again, has looked fantastic. I mean, he just looks like, and LeBron's guarding him, and he's able to score over LeBron. I mean, he hit that three-point shot at the end of the second quarter where he gets fouled, really big shot, tough shot, very impressive. So those two guys just have really played well. I think Isaiah in his 20 minutes, 6 assists in 20 minutes, very respectable. I would like to see him get a little more time than he did. I'm not sure where Kyle was. I didn't look at the injury report. Something, kept him out of this game. But, offensively, the team played really well. And it has played really well the last few games. So let's look at the positive side of that is, that's really good. Obviously in every game, and you're going to get into this later, there's other aspects of the game you can look at, but you got to say it was fun to watch Keyonte and Lauri tonight, and I very much appreciate that. It was great also to see Kyle come in and do some things as well. But offensively, I was very pleased with the team tonight.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was certainly the offensive side of the ball was the highlight of tonight's game for sure. And if they continue to shoot those type of percentages and just bring the turnovers down a bit, they'll be in a lot more games this season than they were last. They can certainly make a lot of these games competitive, even if they end up on the short end at the end of the game. You know, as long as they're improving, I think we just want to see improvements this year. So that does take us back at the end of that last game. I was, and we mentioned this on this, that the turnovers in a double overtime game where they only had 9 turnovers tonight, you know, it kicked back up. In a non-overtime game, they had 18 turnovers, and Nurk was a big part of that with 6. But that is something on the offensive side of the ball that the Jazz still have to work on. And I know that Hardy's talked about this. The turnovers remain a problem. The Jazz are at the top of the league in number of turnovers per game, and that is another area that they have to improve. And also that impacts the defensive numbers as well. And that is something we are going to focus on here in a few minutes, is the defensive side of the ball. But those turnovers really did hurt tonight. And, you know, it is kind of what it is. I mean, Jazz have a really young team. So are they at the high end of the turnover? Yes, but that's also to be expected. So it's just something, this is a process, just kind of like the defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a process, and you know, we have to look at the positives. We have to be excited about certain things. You know, I think you and I probably both listed the Lakers announcers. You know, they were kind of critical of Ace having a bad game. I don't think he had a bad game, right? He didn't have a superstar game, but he's a rookie that's 12 games into 13 games into his first season. Half of those he missed because of injury or quasi-injury. So I thought he had a respectable game. You know, he had some nice moves, hit it one step back 3-pointer that, you know, I can't imagine being able to hit that shot. He consistently has been able to do it. Had some really nice dunks, but it wasn't the dunks. It was his cuts to the basket. I mean, he just has his instinct to get, like, you know, an opening and cut to the basket. He's really skilled at that. So there were just a lot of positives all around on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and one of the other interesting things from tonight's game from a Jazz standpoint, so the Jazz shot a lot of threes tonight, and the Jazz shot 13 for 45 from 3, which is 29%. But shooting the 2-pointers, the Jazz shot 47 2-pointers. So it was almost exactly a 50-50 split between the 2-point shots and the 3-point shots. So they shoot 47 3-pointers, but they made 35 of 47 2-pointers. That is an amazing shooting night from 2, but the 3-point shooting tonight really let him down. And Ace was one of those that had a rough night shooting the ball from 3. He was 1 for 6. Keyonte, this was one of his better games shooting the ball, 5 for 13. So, you know, Lauri is 3 for 9. But overall, the team struggled from 3 tonight, and that was one of the things. But the points scored were not the issue with the Jazz tonight, in all honesty. It's those defensive numbers, and they really struggled to contain the Lakers at all. And the Lakers shot 60% from the field overall, which is an incredibly high number for an entire game.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I'm having some freeze ups at my, with my internet. But the other one, I was just looking at the box score, and so Ace did have 1 rebound, so not fantastic in 23 minutes, but 6 for 12, 1 for 6, 1 steal, 0 blocks. Not fantastic on the rebounding side. That should be, you hope it to be better. It was an interesting minute distribution I found tonight. Keyonte had the most minutes at 35. Lauri had the second at 32. It's usually Lauri that has those, not Keyonte. But, both of those players were hot. So, to me, kind of one of the questions is when you have a player that's hot, if you're the coach, do you ride it or do you want them to stay within the game plan before? Like, do you let somebody that's having a hot night shoot 22, 23 times, or do you hope that they kind of stay within the range of what they, the game plan? Like, what do you think of that? Like, do you alter if somebody is hot? Do you substantially alter like the game plan towards that player?
Not at this point in the Jazz development process. I want them to stick with the game plan, and because this isn't just at this point in the Jazz. It's not about winning games, and it's certainly not about one player or even two players. The Jazz are in a development process where they're trying to develop players. So it's super important to kind of have a game plan and stay with the game plan so that it benefits all of the players that play. I mean, that is part of the development process because it does absolutely no good for the Jazz to develop one guy because the Jazz need a lot of help, and they have a lot of young guys. So you have to look at it from the team standpoint and what benefits the franchise, not one single player or not two single players. But that's how I look at it, and I would prefer that the shot distribution and stuff is a bit different than it was tonight, in all honesty.
I agree. I just have a slightly different take on that. And this is, I haven't thought a lot about this. I was just trying to thinking of this game tonight, is that I guess I'd be okay that if you got to go to the hot hand. So if you slightly alter the game plan to say, like, look, this guy is really on tonight, let's give him another 5 or 6 shots. I'm okay with that. The challenge a young team is that if you do that, is the young player then going to feel like in the next game they have a license to do the same? And I feel like that's with some of our young players right now. If you don't keep them in check, they will feel like the next game they're going to have a license to do the same, and that's where their shooting percentages really drop, right? Because they're like, okay, let me start gunning it up again, and the shot selection gets hurt, and then over a course of 5 games they really start shooting poorly. So that's my only fear in doing that, is I'm actually okay. I think you have to go with the hot hand, but I hope that it doesn't hurt the game plan overall and like the development of that player where the next game they put up 22 shots a game again. So let's watch that next game to see how it works, because that was like my thought walking into this, thinking, I wonder how these players that are like shooting more they normally do back to what years ago, what will happen the next game.
Yeah, we'll see. And obviously, the next game's going to be. I mean, the Lakers are not a good defensive team. They struggle mightily, in all honesty. I mean, that backcourt of Luka and Austin Reeves, that's not a good defensive backcourt. But this next game, the Jazz are playing OKC, and before they hit the Lakers again. So the Jazz play OKC at home, and that's going to be a good test. Right now, OKC has their opponent points per game and they're fewest in the league at 106. So that's going to be a different challenge. We'll see what happens with that, because I'm quite frankly looking forward to this game a lot, because I want to see how the Jazz respond to one of the better defensive teams and see how it goes. Now, they already played Boston. Boston is one of the better teams in opponent points per game as well. And the Jazz struggled. The Jazz ended up winning that game because that was a game that Boston shot 11 for 51 from 3. And they did win that game in Boston, which was probably arguably the best win of the season so far. But this is a different challenge playing OKC, because Boston overall isn't a great team. They're pretty good defensively, but not a great team. OKC is pretty good on both sides of the ball, obviously by their record. So it'll be interesting to play the OKC Thunder this week.
Yeah, the other thing that I point about Oklahoma City, and we'll talk more about them when we play them, obviously, but again, they've found players that, scrap heap's the wrong word, but players that were not highly touted that are really contributing this year on their team. I mean, they have guys that are standing out and playing much better. I don't know if it's a system, I don't know if it's the coach, but they're doing something right there. It's not just the amazing draft asset collection that they have. They're really doing, development of players, or picking the right players. I mean, it's very impressive what they're doing there. Like, they're better than they are last year. And and Jay Will has not even played this year. I mean, they're better than they are last year. I mean, it is very impressive. Now, I'll tell you something. My theory is, I think in Salt Lake, the Jazz are going to put some points in the city. Like, that's my theory, is that we're actually going to be able to score on them. I could be wrong and we end up with 100 points or 95, but I think we're actually going to be able to score on them. But I think that they're going to score on us, and maybe that should, a segue into, your next topic.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I think the Jazz have a shot at winning that game. I think the Jazz, any game they play in Salt Lake, I think they have a shot at winning. That home court advantage, like I will say, that home court advantage in Salt Lake is immense, and I think the Jazz have a legitimate shot at winning that game. We'll see if it works out. But let's look at some defensive statistics in terms of opponent points per game so far this season. So let's take a look at that and see what those numbers are. So as I said, here's the column. The column is opponent points per game. So as you can see, Oklahoma City Thunder, their opponents on average score 106.4 points per game. Then you have the Boston Celtics at 108.5. And then you have San Antonio Spurs, 111.3. Detroit Pistons 112.1, Denver Nuggets 112.7, Houston Rockets 113.3, Orlando Magic 113.9, and Phoenix Suns at 114.4, Atlanta Hawks 114.4, and then the Lakers at 114.4. So those are the top 10 teams in the NBA right now in opponent points per game. And then you look down at the Jazz going into tonight's game, this doesn't count tonight's game. So going into tonight's game, they're 123.7, which is 28th in the NBA out of 30 teams. But let's contrast that with what happened last year in the playoffs. And this is my point of this. Things changed drastically in the playoffs to a much more physical game, and the opponent points per game come down drastically. The points you score come down drastically. So in opponent points per game in last year's playoffs, the Boston Celtics, 100.2. Houston Rockets, 104. Golden State Warriors, 106.1. OKC Thunder, 106.3. Minnesota Timberwolves, 106.4. Orlando Magic, 106.4. Los Angeles Lakers, 107.4. Clippers, 107.7. Cavaliers, 107.8. Detroit Pistons, 108. And then on the high end of that, you have the Memphis and Miami Heat down at 120 and 126. So the point is, the NBA, as it's constructed, as it's officiated, that postseason is vastly more physical than the regular season, and it's super important to build a team that can defend with physicality in the playoffs, because if you don't, it's going to be very difficult to win games. And ultimately, what we all want is we all want the Jazz to compete for a title legitimately. So that defensive end of the court, like Will Hardy was saying, going into this year, we're going to focus on defense, we're going to focus on defense, we're going to focus on defense. That still needs to be the focus throughout this entire season, and next season, they have to improve the defense materially, not at the margins. It has to be improved significantly. So I commend Will Hardy for that focus, and I hope that he continues that focus moving forward, because Danny Ainge has also commented about how important this is to defend, and we need to see better defensive numbers. So I still want the Jazz to have that focus on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I do too. And let me just say this, is that, first, the chart you showed about the defensive numbers, bottom on the list that you didn't mention, their number was 129, the Washington Wizards. There's 3 teams this year that I think all have one win. Those teams are brutal. Let's just be really frank about it. And they're not trying to win, they're trying to lose. 129 points a game defensively is just brutal. You can't, that's an embarrassment for an NBA team. But these teams have figured out the way to eventually get good is you play the lottery, you gotta lose. And so it is something we're going to talk about, not now, but as the season goes on, that we still want to be in the mix, that we don't have to get lucky to jump like Dallas did, that we need to keep our draft pick and we need to get another high draft pick. So that's point one. I was going to say that. And then point two is we all commend Will Hardy for setting the tone, but the reality is that our team, and look, it's Ryan Smith's decision at the end of the day, or Ryan and Ashley Smith, however that decision is made at the end of the day. But we as fans, if this is like run like a corporation, we as fans say, look, you've got to be a good defensive team to win. And that's on Will, and it's on both of the Angels, right? And they've got to do something to make the defense better. And we are hearing what Will's saying. We all believe in what Will is saying, but the results have to eventually, there has to be results eventually. And I hope that there's accountability if they're not there. Now, I don't want there to be accountability because I just want it fixed. But if it is not fixed, I hope there is some accountability.
Yeah, at some point there has to be. I mean, Ainge said that after the second season of this. I mean, he and Will came at the same time. After the second season, he said the defense has to improve, and we haven't seen it yet. So now we're into year 4, and we have to see some improvement. Yes, Walker Kessler, the best defensive player on the team by far, with the most defensive impact, he's out. But still, the rest of the team has to improve. We need to see better schemes, better effort, better attention to detail, and all those things. So we need to see improvement. There has to be improvement. We can't just end the season and not see improvement yet again after 4 years. So that's what I think that we all want, and we all need to keep looking for and try and pressure the team and the franchise to play better defense. And yes, the Jazz need better defensive personnel. We all know that. Much better defensive personnel. But it's still we need to see improvement.
Yeah, and there's got to be accountability at the end of the day. It's like if somebody is not doing what you want them to do, you sit them down, and all the players the same, right? We're very soon looking at the defensive statistics of various players, just like the offensive statistics. We said we were going to wait long enough. It won't buy towards a short number of games. It's still going to be a short number of games, but we're going to start looking at that. And the reality is, the Jazz brass has to look at those too. And if they're not meeting the standards that you expect, you've got to hold them accountable. So I hope that happens. How are we doing on time? Are we out of time?
Yeah, 23 minutes.
Okay, so let me just bring up one thing. This one, do you have anything else on the agenda?
No, I'm
not.
done.
I wanted one player.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, so let me bring up Austin Reeves. Now, my guess is neither you nor I are the biggest Austin Reeves fans, but right before I was waiting to start this, I was looking at Austin Reeves' stats this year, and let me just kind of read them off to you because I got to tell you, it is impressive. This year, and LeBron hasn't played. Keep that in mind. LeBron has not played, but this is averaging 28.3 points a game. He's averaging 8.2 assists a game, 5.1 rebounds, 3.1 turnovers. So I don't know what the ratio is, but let's just say that's 2.5 to 1. So, above average, 33% from the 3-point line. So not great there, 48.2% from the field. But, the most impressive number in that, and we've been giving Keyonte a lot of credit for his increase in the free throw percentage. Austin Reeves is averaging, sorry, I flipped off the page, 9.5 free throws a game.
Mm-hmm.
9.5. Now I know he had that one game, but I'll tell you, like I'm not the biggest Austin Reeves guy, but sometimes you say look, my bias is against this guy, and then I look at these stats, and that's in the end type of player scoring 28 points a game is not, that's not chump change. That's impressive. So I got to tell you, I don't know if it's going to continue the whole year. It can't with LeBron coming back and getting more of the ball handling, but I'm impressed with those numbers.
Yeah, I have a lot of belief in Austin Reeves on the offensive end of the court. I think he does everything well. He passes it really well. He's herky-jerky with the ball in his hands. He gets into guys' bodies and shoots a lot of free throws. He does have a really nice shooting. I mean, his shooting mechanics are great. He shoots it well from both 2 and 3. He kind of plays at his own pace. So I think he's terrific, and he passes the ball very well. I think all those things are great. My big complaint with Austin is I'm not sure who he guards, because that's my issue with him. And that's really my only issue. All that other stuff I think is fantastic. He's really good. On the offensive side, he's really, really, really good.
Yes, and I think that another point with him is if Austin Reeves ends up being in a trade package with the Jazz or somebody else, I do think that's an asset. Before, when I heard the Lakers fans, and we all are biased as our fans, we can never include Austin Reeves. That actually is a real asset, to be able to trade him. He's not specifically the type of player still I want on my team. Like, he wouldn't be my first choice, but I gotta give him props, is that his numbers are very impressive. And when you start looking at defensive numbers, let's look at his, because I'm very curious to see on the defensive end how he does. I suspect not fantastic, but let's take a look.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we will call it a night, and we'll see what happens with the Jazz back in Salt Lake against the OKC Thunder. But anyway, for those watching on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. You can also follow us on X @JazzSmack, and we will talk to everybody later.